Hi there. Today I'd like to do something a little different in the video. I've been talking a lot in the past about gear, which was a little too much. I've been talking a lot about composition, which is far more useful. Today though, I want to take a slightly different tack. Lately I've been watching some videos from a channel called the 8-Bit Guy. Now what's interesting about his channel is that he takes old electronic equipment, old game systems, old computer systems, basically refurbishes them and does shows where he talks about, well, basically how things have changed. That got me thinking. I've done videos here showing off some of my old cameras, most of which are just, well, they just gather dust on a shelf. I really liked my first generation 6-megapixel Pentax camera. Well, one of them has returned to the roost. This is the last of the 6-megapixel Pentax cameras. This is the K100D Super. The Super meant that this had the contacts in it for the electronic motor in the lens focusing system that Pentax uses on a lot of its newer lenses. This came out at the same time as the K10D. Both of them were CCD cameras. The K10D had the 10 megapixel that also came out in cameras like the Nikon D200. Meanwhile, this still had the 6 megapixel chip that was found in Nikons such as the D70, the D50, the first of the D40s. I like the pictures this takes. And this particular model has shake reduction. It has sensor cleaning. It has the contacts for the electronic lenses. But it still runs on AA batteries. Okay? A little bit of a throwback from the early days. The result is that you have a camera that the dynamic range is not great. The JPEG output is not great. But you shoot raw files with this and process them and you get some interesting results. I've had some very nice pictures from this camera, and yes, it puts its own slant on the picture because of the low dynamic range of the old 6-megapixel image processor, but this sensor does do a pretty decent job even in low light. Here I have an even older camera, a much older camera. This was used by a company that shot school pictures. When they switched from the big Camera Z system 70mm cameras to digital, this is what they went with. Now from the front it looks rather Nikon-like, because basically it was. The camera part of this particular device is all Nikon, right down to the lens, which of course, being Nikon, mounts the wrong way. Everything about it is Nikon, but the image processing and the sensor are all from Fuji. Now, that meant that the back of this camera is very different. This is basically the same camera as the Nikon D100, which I think were both based on the F70 film camera. The difference is that this one is much deeper because it actually has two battery systems. In here, we have the batteries that would have been in the old F70. Two lithium 123 batteries. They power the camera. Right here, you have a tray which is now empty because the batteries are charging. A tray for 4 AA batteries that power the digital electronics. And the back is all Fuji. This particular camera has 2 card slots. One is compact flash, as you'd expect. The other is for the old smart media cards, which I don't have one with me right now, but I'll make sure that there is one showing up on the video, because my wife's old Fuji Zoom point and shoot used the same cards. Smart media were actually very thin cards that did not have high capacity and weren't very smart at all. They were just memory chips. So anyhow, here we have a camera that is an amalgam of two camera companies' work. The lens on this right now is a Nikon DX kit lens, the 18 to 55, sorry. Originally, when I got it from my friend who gave it to me, it had the 28 to 105 on it. Now, this particular camera does have one flaw. It now has a line on the images, so I have to crop much of the top of the image away. But the interesting thing is that this used the Super CCD technology that Fujifilm were dealing with at the time, which basically had pixels that were not aligned in a simple Bayer matrix, but instead were on a diagonal, so that they could interpolate the image to 12 megapixels. So this was capable of a file size of 12 megapixels on a sensor that was 6 megapixels, so the result was approximately the same resolution level you would have gotten from 8 megapixels. What was the claim to fame of this camera? Excellent flesh tones. That's why it was used as a portrait camera. Alright, so why am I showing off these and what's the point? Remember I mentioned the 8-bit guy? The thing is that he has started receiving goods from people who have old electronics that are no longer of any use to them, that don't have any commercial value, and they're sending them to him, and he gets to talk about them on a show. Well, I'm wondering if there aren't a few viewers out there that somewhere in a back closet, do you have some of these old 6 megapixel cameras? For instance, if somebody had been shooting a Konica Minolta 5D or 7D, then they have probably upgraded by now to one of the newer Sony Alpha bodies, which means they may have this camera lying around somewhere. If you have an old camera like that, basically they have little or no resale value. You may be able to get as much as $100 for one if you're really lucky, but for the most part they'll just languish on a shelf. First generation Canon Rebels, old Nikon D100s, D70s, D50s. If you have one of these cameras and you don't really have a need for it and you don't have a sale for it and you're not sure what to do with it, let me know. I would love to receive some of these cameras so I could talk about them in a separate segment, because this obviously can't be my regular talking about composition segment. This has to be something a little different. So folks, if you do have something like that, please contact me. I'd be very interested to know if there aren't a few people out there who wouldn't mind taking up some of my shelf space with some of their earlier digital SLRs. I'm not really that interested in point and shoots unless it's an interesting point and shoot, but the digital SLRs, I think that they have, I like to take them out now and then and just shoot with them. And the Pentax in particular will get a fair bit of time because I do like the results. Nowadays, where much of our work ends up on social media, we don't really need anything more than 6 megapixels in order to be able to display the images. I know 4K is 8 megapixels, so if you have a 4K screen, you will be able to take advantage of larger files. But for most of us, 6 megapixels is more than enough. Well guys, this is an off-the-tracks kind of video, just a little something, a little thought I'm not seriously considering going out looking for equipment like this, but if you have an interest in this, if you would like to see me do more of this, or if you do have a piece of equipment that you have no more use for and you want to send it my way, by all means let me know. Meanwhile, hopefully you will follow my regular videos and, well, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos. I guess that's all I can say for this one. This one was a little bit different. So, well, bye for now.